Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Be me 14 or 15 years old, at a summer camp for smart kids. Very last day, and we're all snuggled into one college room to sleep for the night. Just for fun, I'm laying down on a cot surrounded by people, talking quietly across the room with my buddy Ashton. Suddenly, out of the blue, I feel like I'm being washed away by a stream. I feel weird, and I've never experienced it before in my life. I didn't realize it at the time, but that anchored feeling you have inside you was completely gone. I talked to him about it, not really aware of how weird it's gotta sound. Just go to sleep, K. I wake up in the morning still feeling off. Months pass and I've lost awareness of how empty I feel. Our school's scheduled trip for Washington, D.C. comes and goes. I felt completely depersonalized the whole trip. At some point I noticed that my sense of smell is also completely gone, except for when a scent is really strong or just under my nose. The amazing trip passes with me hardly having any solid memories of the time I spent there. A whole year passes, some things still wrong. 3 years pass, still depersonalized. I can't get mental health care because of the cost in America. Every sinus medication I've ever tried won't return my nearly gone sense of smell. I feel terrible. Anons. I try to remain optimistic. And some days I even get moments of clarity where I can smell and feel good, but they only last 10 or less minutes and they occur over months. I've never taken any serious drugs. Only painkillers after the Washington trip for a surgery I had to get on my pectus excavatum.
Well, I guess I should go ahead and finally tell my story. It's not very, like to be honest, it's not in Norwoods. I was no fun at the time. There are no skinwalkers, goatmen, fleshgates involved as far as I know anyways. But I feel compelled to finally get around to writing it out, just for the record and maybe so you guys can get some spooks out of it. Back when I was 17 I lived just outside of Washington, D.C. I enjoyed it well enough for the most part. D.C. is no fun and has a massive homeless problem but isn't a complete shithole. I was a complete artist in school with depression and I got kicked out of my nice Catholic prep school due to poor grades. Instead of sending me to public school over in Virginia, where I lived, my parents decided to send me to a non-traditional school in the city. In addition to school, I had a job at a movie theater in Rockville, which is just outside D.C., to the northwest. Now I was 17 at the time, but had no driver's license. When I was able to get my learner's permit at 15, one procrastinated due to not wanting to go to the DMV for a whole year. When I finally did get my permit, I did my hours and my driving course and such, but fell into the same trap of not wanting to go to the DMV, so I didn't get my license until I was almost 18. So because of this, and because my parents rightfully didn't want to drive me into DC every day during rush hour only to then have to go back into Virginia to get to work, I took the metro to school and work every day. If there are any Washingtonians here, then you might understand my route. I started out on the Virginia side of the Potomac River, to the east of the city, at Virginia Square, GMU Station, which is on the Orange Line. For the purposes of this story, the Orange Line starts in Virginia and ends just outside of DC, to the northeast, and the Red Line starts out northwest, where my job was, and then went down into the center of DC and up to the northeast again. My school was about a block away from the Eastern Market Metro Station on the Orange Line, about 3/4 of a mile southeast from the Capitol along Pennsylvania Avenue. My job was a little ways away from the Rockville Metro Station. When my shift ended at around 11:15 I had to book it to the Metro stop most days. Stations close at 12 between Sunday and Thursday and take the Red Line down to Metro Center, which as the name suggests, is in central DC. Switch to the Orange Line, then take the Orange Line to East Falls Church in Virginia, from which I would take the bus or a cab home. I'll put it all in a map I'll make in post along with this. Sorry, a whole post of this is just setup. The setup is important. So now that all that is established, I can start getting into the story. For a couple months, everything was completely unremarkable. I had ridden the metro on and off for most of my life, but never this extensively. So I was fine with the whole experience. The only part that ever felt weird was coming home at night. During the weekends, even at like 1 a.m. people were on the metro, but during the week, when I came home from work, it was very common for me to be the only person on the train and sometimes even the only person in an entire station. Though I wasn't really spooked by it, at least for a while. I always sat up front in the train, like the very front. I liked looking out the front of the train and watching the tracks go by. I had loved doing this as a kid, and I still did because I was a child even at 17. One night I was riding the red line back from Rockville to Metro Center. I was the only person in the car, probably in the train. I caught the last train before the system closed. I was looking out the front of the train like usual when I saw something weird. It looked like a white branch, like birch or something. It was thin, almost spindly. It was pressed up against the wall when I first saw it, as the train's headlights started to hit it. I thought it must have been a length of wire or pipe. But then it moved. It was really quick. Not even like twitchy quick, it just suddenly moved out of the edge of the headlights of the train and I couldn't see it anymore. I wrote it off in my head as being overworked, as cliche as that is. After all, tending to a popcorn machine on a pretty much empty movie theater is hard work. I pretty much forgot about the incident over the course of the week due to school and such occupying my mind. And then about a week later I saw it again, in about the same place on the line. This time, it was on the opposite end of the tunnel, and I got to see a little more of the thing before it moved away. It was connected to something bigger, like a leg connected to a body, which is what I immediately conjured up in my mind. As the train's headlights hit it, it moved away with the same agility. But this time, about 10 seconds later, I saw it again, and it did the same thing. And then a few days later it happened again. This time all I saw was what looked like a foot before whatever it was scampered off into the darkness. At this point I was freaking out. I felt that terrible, deep-seated desire to no more start to grow. I started to be vigilant for the weird leg anytime I was on my way home from work. I would see it more and more often over time. Sometimes I would see a little more than the leg, sometimes I would even see two of the legs. But it would always scamper into the darkness as soon as the light from the train hit it. Sometimes I would see it a few times during one ride, sometimes not. I started trying to record whatever it was. I would take a notepad with me and record between which stops I would see it, how much of it I saw, and if I saw it repeatedly. At one point it occurred to me to ask the train operator if he saw anything. So one night after I got off at East Falls Church, I quickly asked the operator up front if he ever saw anything weird when he drove the trains at night. I tried not to be a spurg about it, but he seemed on edge when I asked him, even though he replied with a simple nod. Things continued like this for a while, and seeing the thing almost became part of my routine of getting home. I wasn't scared of it anymore, not really, since I was in a fast-moving metal missile and the thing never seemed to be hostile or anything. Things just continued to go about the same path. Until one night it got real. I was riding on the train, and I was waiting for the leg to show up. But it didn't. I had seen it every day for the past 2 weeks, but there was nothing tonight. I was thinking to myself something along the lines of being sad that the 2-week streak was coming to a close when I saw them. 2 glints in the darkness. My eyes at this point had gotten so used to spotting things in the darkness due to months of spotting this thing in addition to years of playing Twitch shooters. So I saw them there, and I knew they weren't normal, but I still tried to rationalize it, even after months of spotting a leg in the metro tunnels. But then they blinked. It was unmistakable that it was a blink that had occurred. I jumped so hard I nearly pulled a muscle in my leg. I could tell that those eyes I saw were entirely black. Black and beady. Like the eyes of a rat. Suddenly my fear for the thing in the dark was renewed. I was on edge for the rest of the ride to Metro Center. Though I still felt safe inside the train, I was realizing the gravity of the situation. There was something in the dark of the tunnels of the metro, and it had taken enough of an interest in me to show up almost daily. That thought followed me to Metro Center. Ironically, I felt safer in the station than I did on the train due to the simple fact I had never seen anything weird in the stations. I got to Metro Center, got off the train, and waited for my next train. It was then I started hearing it. A soft pitter-patter, not unlike that of a rodent scurrying across the floor. I became on edge again. The noise started getting louder, and I started to shit myself more. At the point where it started actually sounding like human footsteps. I said screw it to myself, and turned around towards the tunnel where my train had come from. I shouldn't have. It was there. Not just a leg or eyes. The thing in its entirety, and it wasn't in the tunnel anymore, it was on the platform with me. That thing is something I will never forget. It was like a person, but warped to the point where almost all traces of humanity were gone. It was thin, horribly thin, emaciated. I could see how its pallid gray flesh wrapped around its bones, not even covering the holes in some of its leg and arm bones. It was hunched over, not on all fours, but hunched over like an elderly person, with its legs crumpled down and its arms held in front of its chest like how a prairie dog holds its arms when it stands up. Its head was completely hairless, and was hung down so I couldn't make out its face. I opened my mouth to scream, but I just whimpered like a baby. I shouldn't have done that. I think I provoked it. It started to move towards me with a horrible gait. It stayed in its hunched-over position, low to the ground, but its legs extended out and it took long strides forward. Like crouch walking. Its legs wobbled and twitched with each step towards me. It was obvious this thing wasn't used to walking like this, that it was better suited to crawling along the walls. As it came closer, I started to smell it. It had that pungent, rancid odor of trash in the city. My eyes started to water as it got closer. Speaking of which, it was closing the gap fast. When I first turned around, there must have been about 150 feet between us. But within 5 or 6 steps, it was only about half that distance away. My stupid brain finally kicked in and put me into survival mode, and I booked across the platform. My stupid idea was to try and outrun it to the end of the platform, then jump across the tracks to the other platform and keep running out towards the surface. My plan got about a quarter done when I realized it wasn't going to work, because that's when the thing stretched out. I looked over my shoulder and crapped myself again. The thing was now standing on its legs, and it had its arms out. I don't know how I only managed to see as much as I did in the tunnel, but what I saw in there wasn't accurately representing the whole thing. It must have been 15 feet tall at least. Its torso was thinner than its femur. Its arms came down to its shins as it let them drag along. And then there was its face. Its face looked like that of a starving man, with sallow skin tightly wrapping its cheekbones like a corset. Its eye sockets were far too big for its beady little eyes, with the top of the socket jutting out a good 2 inches beyond where the eye ended. And the mouth was a gaping hole with no jaw to be seen. This thing had reached its full height, and I had just about made my peace with death when some beautiful conductor honked the horn on his train that was coming in downstairs to signify to no one that no one could get on. I don't know why, but that horn caused the monstrosity in front of me to reel backwards and let out the most horrible sound I've ever heard before going down on all fours and scuttling back into the tunnel. I took a cab home that night, and then pretty much every night for the rest of the year. I haven't gone on the metro there since. I've moved farther into Virginia, so I haven't been around Washington. But even if I was back there, I wouldn't take the metro again if it meant losing $1 billion or whatever. I did some more research. Apparently there are urban myths of something in the tunnels down there. I also found out about a series of abandoned tunnels, just under DuPont Circle, the metro stop nearest to which I commonly saw the thing. That's pretty much it. Here's a map of where I saw the thing with stations where I was near when I saw it marked and areas to avoid marked.
This is a second-hand account revolving around a subterranean cryptid living in the Washington, D.C. metro system. I don't have all the answers, and my research into the creature after first hearing the story didn't turn up much. So I concluded there must not be much awareness of its existence at this time. Hopefully posting here will help. I was riding the metro home very late one night after returning from a trip to Philly. It was a Sunday around 11 p.m. So I think I might have caught one of the last trains of the evening. The conductor seemed to confirm this, as he sat casually with his little operator door open. I had ridden in the first car of a train before, but I'd never seen one of the conductors operating it, so I sat nearby. We were the only 2 people in this train car. I'm not really one to strike up conversations with strangers, but his man clearly was. While speeding us through the red line, he looked over his shoulder and said, "It's nights like these, am I right?" Very silly way to start a conversation, but I humored him with a nod. He starts rambling his way through random anecdotes of the job, his family, his weekend. His conductor was a talker. I was only half listening when he mentioned something about a monster living in the metro. I, like I'm sure many of you would, immediately perked up and started asking questions. "You're saying there's a monster in the metro?"
Sure is, I've seen it myself.
The way he looked at me, you'd have thought he was the world's foremost expert on this creature. "What do you call it?" He shrugged.
I don't know, it's just the monster. The Metro Monster.
Not exactly the most inventive name, but it got to the point and I liked the alliteration. How many others have seen it?
Oh, just me and my buddy. He works the red line too.
Huh, I thought. Not exactly the large network of witnesses I had been imagining or hoping for. It was clear to me that this thing was in the early stages of attaining urban legend status. I proceeded to garner as much information as I could from the conductor. He told me he would see it from the front windows of his train car. Late at night when the metro has just about closed, he would catch glimpses of it by the lights from the train car illuminating the tunnel. They would speed on by and the creature would quickly slink off to the side, flattening itself against the wall of the tunnel while the train passed. When I asked what it looked like, the conductor had some trouble describing it. He told me it looks a bit like a tree. Lots of spindly protrusions that aren't exactly limbs. It also has a distinct central trunk that these branches snake out from. However, the creature is pale white, with almost human-like skin. The conductor couldn't say much beyond that, though he insisted that it wasn't just a collection of stray wires. I was skeptical, but he said he's seen it enough times to know it was alive and too large to be wires hanging in the tunnels. When the train lights caught sight of the monster, he could see it twist. He could see it look towards the oncoming train. He could see the red flash of what might have been eyes. Since then, I've done some research. I found one other post sharing a detailed encounter with something in the DC Metro, though it seems a bit sensationalized. Its description of the creature is similar to what was seen by my train conductor. I've had difficulty tracking down the source, but I linked the post below. DC has over 50 miles of underground tunnels networking the city, and a lot of these tunnels are not actually for public transit use. There are unused metro tunnels and stations, secret tunnels connecting important buildings across DC, tunnels for emergency evacuations for heads of state, and many of these tunnels connect in one way or another. I am not currently aware of a monster that meets our conductor's description. Perhaps it resembles a rake in some aspects, though the tree-like qualities and dozens of branching limbs were supposed to be its most defining features. Another consideration is a Yativio tree, but the creature was described to me as smaller than that and mobile in a way that no plant can move. It's currently unclear to me whether the Metro monster is dangerous or docile, though from what I can tell it seems to frequent the red line. This story is 100% true, and I will swear on that to the grave. Be me, 8th grader, going on a school trip to Washington, D.C. One day we go to a nearby Virginia town for a night ghost tour. When we arrive, we split into 2 groups. One of my group stops was an old hotel. It was used as a hospital during the Civil War. Tour guide says that some people can capture ghosts on camera in the yard, since many people died there. CO.AG. Entire class is taking pictures. No flash. Some kids claim they have pictures of a ghost. It's usually a reflection of a street lamp off a window or something. I get a few of those. Just before leaving, I aim to take one final picture. See a white wisp through my phone camera. WTF.GIF. I look up and see that it can only be seen through my camera. I follow it, and as it starts to move upward, I take a picture before it disappears. Look at camera. See pic related, recreation. A big white blob on a pitch black background. No hotel in sight. Get on the bus to go back to our hotel in DC. I show friends, they think it's weird. When we get back, I try to show my roommates. The picture is just black. No white blob. Are you kidding me? WEBM. Turn lights off. The white blob is there again. No joke, I think I got a picture of an entity. It would only show up in dark, cursed pictures. The worst part is the idiot child me did not back it up. Shortly after getting home, my phone randomly reset and I lost all my data. It was weird and it pissed me off so much. Now nobody will ever believe this because it's too convenient, but I swear on my soul this is 100% true.
Okay, X. I was obsessed with Goatman, Skinwalker, mimicry stories for a while, but I haven't looked in a while. And then this happened to me last night, and now I literally cannot sleep or stop crapping my pants due to its proximity to my house. I'll try to use Greentext as much as I can, but first background. I am 21 and a college senior from Connecticut. While I live in a semi-rural area, about 20 minutes to the closest supermarket, fast food. I go to school in Washington, D.C. Not the nice part, either. The part where crackheads are a real thing and cops are reassuring rather than troublesome. I've definitely seen some weird things in my day. It would be good to mention here that I'm not some glandular freak, but I'm about 6'1" and 240 pounds, a lot of muscle, but Lord knows I could drop 15 pounds. Being the good student that I am, I picked a real major. Accounting, and I interned for a mid-sized PR firm doing accounting work and getting paid $20 an hour. College is expensive though, so I deliver pizzas at night after the office closes. It's a cheap, drunk food kind of pizza place that has an absurdly large delivery radius and is around 20 minutes from my house, 5 minutes from the beach. My place is north of there and we deliver probably another 15 minutes past my house. I'm actually typing this at work in between examining the fine print on our client contracts to ensure we are charging them every penny we can, cheap bastards. So basically, the further north you go from the pizza place, the more rural it gets. I work until close and this occurs around 9:45 p.m. Be me, in the back, folding pizza boxes like a good little corporate wagey. The counter girl comes back with a delivery slip. She tells me the customer sounded weird on the phone, kind of like he was talking through a fan or through his hands, and that he was almost like gurgling. My 600 experience instantly makes me think crackhead, although around here it's way more likely to be some benzo freak or painkiller addict. Automatically assuming some weird interaction will occur. Look at the address, see it is kind of Bumble. I'm a little mad cause I don't want to drive that far, but screw it. It's the weirdest ticket I've ever seen. Guy ordered a large pizza with anchovies, ground beef, ham, sausage, pepperoni, etc. Literally $15 worth of extras. I go ask the counter girl if it's right. She says she thinks so. She couldn't really make it out though, so she said she did her best. She's like 16, so I cut her some slack, assume she was daydreaming, and call the number back. Phone rings 5, 10, 20, 30 times. No answer. Hang up, call again. Phone goes right to,
I'm sorry, but the person you called has a voicemail box that has not been set up yet. Goodbye.
okay then. .jpg. The manager decides to just make the pizza as ordered and proceed from there. Deliver a pizza to a hilariously obese and blackout drunk couple invited me in for drinks, but I don't drink or smoke when I work. Hope someone else took a weird pizza. Surprised no one did. It's my turn. Begrudgingly take the pizza and get in my car. Enter address into phone. It's on a side street adjacent to a park locals call open space, which despite the name is about 500 acres of straight woods. It's about 25 minutes away, basically the edge of our range. Put on some dubstep and crank my turbo sub-I out to this road. If you're not from a rural area, this can be hard to explain. Winter in the woods is scary. There is never a single sound, ever. Unless there's something larger than a cat walking around, it's you in dead silence. Finally get to address. There are a few houses on the street, but they sit on probably 5 acres, so they are spaced out a fair amount. Looking for number 1134. I passed an 1130, then a long stretch of nothing, then a 1144. WTF.jpg. I just want to get this over with and get the next delivery without getting stabbed by some pillhead over a pizza. Call the number. Rings, stops ringing. There's no sound, but instead kind of like a buzzing or a humming. It's hooked up to my car stereo and it's getting louder and louder until I just hang up because I don't want it to ruin my speakers. Windows are fogging up cause at this point I'm pulled over between those two houses. Right when I roll the windows down, I am overcome by the odor of decaying trash. Like driving through Newark, New Jersey. Gross, so I put the car in first and I start pulling towards the next house. At the end of the driveway there's a stanchion with a light on top. Gonna pull into this house and knock and ask if maybe they gave the wrong number over the phone. Makes sense for a pillhead. I'm probably 100 feet away when I see someone step out of the darkness into the light at the bottom of the driveway. But it's the guy that ordered. Expecting this guy to be all over the place, leaning over and being messed up. Guy isn't that screwed. I stop the car about 10 feet from him. Black coat that looks 3 times too big for him, even though he's probably got 5 inches on me. Don't look at him at first. Getting pizza out of car and getting ticket and change as I talk. Hey sir, sorry about the wait and the calls, this is pretty far. No response. Realize I should be watching him considering the signs. The smell is still pretty pungent, but I know it's not trash day. I get the pizza on the roof of my car. He is standing under the light on the opposite side of my car. So I got out of my driver's seat and went to the driver's seat to get pizza. Put pizza on the roof of the driver rear. Guy is probably 10 feet away from the passenger rear. I finally pay enough attention to get a good look at him. Giant tall, no shoes, ripped up jeans, stains everywhere. Big jacket as mentioned. Look at his face, sunken eyes, can't even see them with the light. Getting real sketched out cause guy hasn't moved or said a word. Stop the process and just stare at the guy. He is staring right at me with those freaky eyes. His head is sort of bobbing side to side, but not in any fluid sense at all. Kind of like a car door, like how it stops it halfway open, then you give it another shove and it stops it all the way open. I watch his head do this in no real pattern for probably 10 seconds. Starting to get really uneasy between the stench and the head thing and the eyes and the not answering. I stand frozen and so does he. Without breaking eye contact, I take my phone out of my pocket and hold it level with the roof so I can look at the guy and my phone at the same time. Go to recent calls. Call the number for the guy. Call it. Phone starts ringing, but I hear no phone anywhere. Then out of the quiet of the woods, I hear, faintly, so faintly, a cell phone ringing back, and they're maybe 50 or 100 yards away. This is my kicking myself for not getting my CC yet. This is me almost crapping myself. The guy's just standing there still doing the head thing, but I swear I see that smile. Finally get the courage to speak. Ooh, can you please come get this? Also, I think you may have dropped your phone when you were hiding a body or whatever in the woods. Nervously laugh, still thinking maybe this guy dug too deep into the prescription bottle or found some PCP or something. I see his mouth open, head still bobbing, feet planted to ground. He makes sort of a low guttural, quick grunt. Then a high grunt, then a low grunt. They are sort of soft, kinda like someone clearing their throat. I've shut the rear passenger door at this point and I'm ready to book it to the driver's seat if I got to. Just as I go to call that phone again, I hear words.
The phone's not mine.
The pause between the and phone snot was way too long. Phone snot literally sounded like one word. Mine came off an octave higher. My mind is DEFCON 5 like just full panic attack. Knees are weak. I'm literally about to peace out. I push the pizza to the far side of the roof away from me. Finally muster out, "Sir. You're freaking me out. I have a .45 and less than 20 on me. Please come take this so I can leave." When I say this, the head bobbing stops. His eyes are dark and burning a hole through my skull. Opens his mouth again.
It was his.
"What?" I say, stunned.
It was his. The phone was his.
The guy comes towards the car. Not a step, but like one huge muscle spasm that propels him forward.
The phone was his.
I'm on the verge of tears at this point. Standing next to open driver's side, pizza is on roof over passenger rear door. Guy jerk jumps once closer to the car.
The phone is not his anymore.
I blubber wordless, and then gathering man balls I scream, "I'm gonna call the cops and blow your drug addict head off if you don't get out of here." I see this smile, this creepy smile, and without moving his mouth I hear him say in a completely different voice. A voice I've never heard before, "Go away, stop following me, I will call the police." In one big jerky motion the thing reaches forward, takes the pizza off the top of the car and places a couple round things that I later identify as quarters on the roof, surrounded by dark liquid that spreads over the roof. I don't even think, just get in the car and peel out down the road, leave the hot sleeve for the pizza. Leave the shit on the roof. Don't even close the door all the way. I go down the road at about 80 for a quarter mile, then pull a U-turn cause I don't want to get even more lost with this psycho here. I whip down the road past the place where he was. Nothing. Finally get to the end of the road. There's a stop sign to merge with the main road. Look right to make sure it's clear, look left. This thing's face is 12 inches from my own when I turn. Tactically crap myself. Heel down road. Finally make it back to pizza place. Shaking like bloody hell. Smoke a joint just to calm me down, which I never do when I'm working. I walk in the front door of pizza place.
"Hey Anon, that guy at the open space house just called back. He said you forgot some food, but he only ordered the pizza right. He said come back, I don't know."
I start crying. Look at my phone, which had been thrown through the car with my driving. 14 missed calls from that number. Literally in tears. All the voicemails are empty except the last one. All I can hear is ragged breathing and those low gruntings. Bawling my eyes out in front of this hot-ass counter girl, and I don't care. Sit for 10 minutes and calm down. Remember the change on the roof. Go out to car and turn on flashlight. The roof of my car was covered in the most viscous weird liquid, but it smells like blood and I throw up immediately. In the panel gap between my trunk and the end of my rear window I find the quarters. Covered in the same maple syrup, thick goop blood, and stuck to it are soft little chunks of what I can only imagine is tissue. Go to open my car and my blood turns to ice. There is a single line of blood going from the front quarter panel to the driver's side door. But the thing tried to open my door when it was next to me at the stop sign. Tactically cry and poop my pants more. I go back in. Tell counter girl to try and call the number again. She tries over and over and over, but the phone goes right to voicemail. Next morning I gave the number to my uncle, who is a police captain a few towns over. Says the number is from a burner phone, paid in cash, basically untraceable, and it appeared to be off now. I sleep with the lights on now.
I don't expect anyone to believe this story. I wouldn't believe this story if I wasn't me, and at that, I'm not sure I believe it. Allow me to be vague. I heard this story from someone who was told this in confidence by a person close to them. Someone who spent their lifetime securing information in every conceivable way, before the term social engineering had a name. This person had a job in a manner of speaking, patching leaks. This person heard it from someone unnamed who likely would have been in a position to know. When a new person is elected in the US, they are taken to an off-the-books meeting to a below-ground theater within their first couple weeks in office. They are not told about the meeting, only that they have one as soon as it is time to be there. They are taken by elevator, led to a dimly lit theater and told to sit down, not to turn around, and that soon the meeting will start. Next, the JFK Zapruder film is played on a continuous loop and the meeting begins. Approximately 5 or 6 men sit down behind this newly elected person, light up cigars and discuss the context of the video and how tragic it was and how all decisions have consequences and how sometimes those consequences don't always happen to the person responsible for the actions but their family members or others. It is a great weight to bear. They repeat the idea that there is always a choice to make and an action to be decided, and how horrible it would be if a person had to make a decision that involved themselves or their family. They are reminded that thankfully these kind of situations can be avoided if they follow the correct path, the one that has been laid out for them. The men finish the discussion and get up and leave. The newly elected person is escorted out and reminded not to speak of this discussion, and that abiding by the very simple requests will lead to great outcomes and is the noble path for that individual to be remembered favorably in history. I know this is not a sensational story. In fact, it is entirely unbelievable in my opinion without the key parts that have been left out, and even with them, it's still so close to a stereotypical Hollywood scene that's it's almost cringeworthy. Almost. Maybe that's the point? Maybe that's why it's set up the way that it is. It's worth sharing to me because of the source, but unfortunately that's all I can share. Believe it or don't, I wouldn't, but it's something to think on as you are passing through. A lot of people have died working in the U.S. Capitol building, including representatives like Joseph Cannon, Wilbur Mills, and Champ Clark, government officials like Vice President Wilson, John Quincy Adams, and James Garfield, and officers who served in the armed forces like General John Logan and Pierre L'Enfant. Many workers also died during the Capitol's strenuous and complicated construction process, too. If any of these folks have a right to haunt the place, it's the latter group, and who's to say they're not? The most sympathetic U.S. Capitol apparition is said to appear on the ceiling, then reappear almost immediately below at ground level, mimicking how he fell during construction of the rotunda. Some say another worker, a stonemason who was crushed to death between collapsed walls, can be seen passing through these same walls while roaming the area. However, the Capitol building is perhaps more famously haunted by the representative ghost of a clouder of black cats that lived on Capitol Hill. Prior to the construction of the U.S. Capitol building, the area was cleared out by hired hands, who were hired in part to kill the cats. Many of them were allegedly wiped out with shovels and pickaxes to allow for easier construction. After this, a single cat apparition, now dubbed the Demon Cat of Capitol Hill, can be seen by those walking the streets of the neighborhood late at night. The demon cat has been said to often appear to security guards, and legend has it that if you don't run from it immediately, the cat will pounce at you, transforming into a panther, then vanish right before it lands.
Many former presidents have allegedly been seen or heard around the building, including Thomas Jefferson, who has been known to play his violin in the Yellow Room, Andrew Jackson, who can sometimes be heard laughing in the Rose Room, and both John Tyler and Frances Cleveland, First Lady to Grover Cleveland, who have appeared in the Blue Room. Lincoln's presence has been felt by former occupants as well, including several First Ladies and presidents. Non-residents who have appeared around the White House include David Burns, who owned the ground that the White House was built on and sold it to the federal government, who can occasionally be observed in the Oval Office, a British soldier, dressed in attire from the War of 1812, who has been observed carrying a torch throughout the building, and the daughter of Surratt, rumored to have pled for her mother's life, who can be heard banging on the front door. The Hay Adams Hotel. This hotel was built in 1927 on the site of the mansion of presidential advisor Henry Adams in the 1880s. The wife of the original mansion owner, Marion Hooper Adams, was found dead in front of the fireplace, either by illness, murder, or suicide. Throughout the hotel her spirit has been seen or felt. At night, the scent of mimosa is in the air on the 8th floor, and the housekeeping closet on the 6th floor will never stay locked after repeated lockings with the key by security. One reported incident by the hotel's security chief in 1997 showed that all the guest room doors opened at the same time on the second floor. Marion Adams is buried in Rock Creek Cemetery with her grave covered by a large statue, by sculptor Augustus St. Gaudens, of a hooded woman. If you stand in front of this statue and look upon it, you will begin to cry. This statue has been called grief. You will also notice that the chandelier of the hotel's lobby constantly sways.
Fort McNair, Building 21. This is the building where John Wilkes Booth was hung, even though he was already dead. He was hung in the attic of the building. He wasn't the only person to be hanged there. One of the companies carrying out renovations to this old building report, all of the tradesmen on the job start very early in the morning, when it's still dark outside. The carpenters there have reported hearing footsteps in the attic, and they have had something follow very close behind him up the cellar stairs, close enough to him to cause him to run the rest of the stairs to the first floor. They were also working in 2 of the 3 rooms in the attic when they noticed what looked like a fly flying around in all 3 rooms. The only thing is that there were no flies in any of the rooms. The rooms are small and wide open, so a fly could not hide from sight.
St. John's Episcopal Church. This church's bell, weighing a remarkable half-ton, was purchased from the Revere Company of Boston. Founded by the son of Paul Revere, it was installed on November 30, 1822. And supposedly, when a notable person dies and the bell tolls, 6 ghostly men in white robes appear in the president's pew at midnight, then promptly vanish. It's unclear who they may be, but they always pay their respects at the location also known as Tragedy Square.
Standing since 1765, the old stone house is the oldest unchanged home in the district. It has changed hands many times and served as the housing for tailors, haberdashers, and Anderson car dealers. The federal government purchased the building in the 1950s and has preserved it, but hasn't managed to keep it free from wandering spirits. A number of strange incidents have been observed at the home, including the sudden sound of children laughing and apparitions of women cooking in the kitchen. Certain points in the home leave visitors feeling an intense chill throughout their body, even during the height of summer, and most terrifyingly, a malevolent spirit, nicknamed George, assaults visitors, usually choking or pushing them, and leaves everyone he meets with an intense feeling of dread. Pass by this old M Street house, and you may notice that strange things start to happen as the sun sets.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.